So talking about concussions. Concussions is a subject in hockey and other contact sports that's getting a lot of attention all the way from the professional leagues all the way down to the lowest level of minor hockey and youth hockey in the United States. Recently at Mayo Clinic, we were part of a Concussion Summit that included all of the stakeholders in this serious issue, which includes USA Hockey Canada, the IIHF, International Ice Hockey Federation, the NHL was represented, also the equipment manufacturers, the helmet manufacturers, and all the people who really are concerned about concussions. The medical people that were there were unbelievable, from exercise physiologists, emergency docs, to neurologists from around the country, actually around the world. As we focus in on this problem of concussions, a couple things are really are important for everybody to understand. And the first of those things is that, we don't know an awful lot about this yet. However, we are learning that the long-term impact of concussions, multiple concussions on athletes when they're young, many, many years later, we're discovering that there are some serious health issues that we believe come from the concussions. So awareness is the first thing that we've got to have here, and taking care of our kids and the older players as they move on into the professional levels. Prevention was something that we were talking about down there, and then the subject of helmets came up. Now, helmets are perceived to be the equipment that's going to prevent concussions, and some of the helmet manufacturers are positioned as better at preventing concussions than others, but the data doesn't support it yet. It may in the future. But right now, as one of the doctors said at this summit, that in a concussion event, the helmet's just along for the ride. Okay, so the real issue of prevention is to teach players, number one, not to hit an opponent in the head ever under any circumstances, and number two, to teach young players and as they grow older to avoid situations where they put themselves at risk at getting hit in the head. Helmets are terrific for what they do, and that's to prevent skull fractures, lacerations, contusions, those types of things, and they do a terrific job. Mouth guards do a great job at protecting teeth, but so far the data does not substantiate any claims that mouth guards are beneficial in terms of protecting an athlete from concussion in hockey. Okay? The other issue, of course, is data, and the data is difficult to obtain. We've been doing a study in Minnesota hockey in two of our districts for, now this is going on to our third year, and this is the fall of 2010, early season, and we are already receiving concussion reports in the squirt and pee-wee levels, 2 or 3 a week in two of our districts. So this again is something we really have to focus on. The third element that I think that parents, players, coaches, administrators really need to focus on is the return to play guidelines. Now, in the past, we thought, well, if a player could shake it off and he knew where he was and could name the current president and knew what the score of the game was without looking at the scoreboard, of course, we thought that player was probably okay to go back and play. Well, now, of course, we know that isn't true. Then there was sort of the 3 to 5 days after the symptoms subsided and were gone. Of course, the only way to know that is if the player, the athlete, said he felt fine. So it was sort of 3-4 days was the common time frame of when players could return to play. Now the medical people are telling us that those time frames are probably too short, especially with adolescents and youth players, because their brains are continuing to develop and they seem to be more susceptible to another concussion in that time frame when they're healing from the first one. And when we get into these multiple concussion situations, these are not good for the athlete. So return to play guidelines. I would suggest, and I know there are a lot of us were talking about this out at the summit, that whatever the recommended time to stay out, you should probably double it. One of the medical people suggested after a serious concussion event that once the symptoms were gone, that it was probably a 30-day time frame until that athlete's brain had recovered completely. There are some tests. The impact test is a pretty good baseline test. The NHL uses it. They also use a paper and pencil test, and they've discovered that actually gives them a better read. The last thing we have to be very careful of with our youngsters and our athletes is the pressure to return to play is pretty great. The athlete wants to return. Their parents sometimes would like them to get back in action pretty fast. The coaches want them back. Their teammates want them back. And in most cases, it's probably okay. But long term, I think you should err on the side of caution and keep your athlete, keep your children, keep your players out of the game and out of harm's way a little longer than you think might be okay. Because if you do the research on this, you'll see that these athletes, getting in their 40s and 50s and 60s are developing some very, very severe health issues that are now being attributed back to concussions. They were once considered to be ALS or other syndromes like that, but now we're discovering that these are concussion-related problems. And it doesn't necessarily have to be when they're older. We've seen a couple athletes pass away recently in their 20s and an 18-year-old, and upon looking at their brains, they discovered that they had some of these severe concussion issues there. So, back to more happy thoughts. Let's protect our kids. USA Hockey has the Heads Up, Don't Duck program. Youth coaches need to coach in a safe way, and we need to make sure that our players have a high level of awareness so they know how to protect themselves in the event of a body check that might be threatening to them. They learn to protect themselves along the wall, and referees need to take their part and take a no-tolerance approach to no head contact and call the penalties as they're prescribed. The same now in high school hockey. There's a new penalty for head contact, and the colleges have done it, and the NHL is doing it. So hopefully with a broad-based knowledge program, an awareness campaign that's going to be more and more prevalent over the next several years, we can significantly reduce the incidence of these types of events, and our kids can play a much safer game and play it for a much longer period of time. Thank you very much.